Irish Nation, Notre Dame finally gets off the schneid, taking care of business, beating Purdue 56-30. Mike, I come back from my trip to South Bend 1-1. I was hoping to be 2-0. Of course, didn't work out against A&M, but back home now. Long set of travel days, so we're doing something new on the show. You and I have done zero prep other than our typical texting with our buddies, during and after the game. But we've got, all of our data sources in front of us. We talked for 2 minutes before hitting the record button about general themes we want to cover. And so listeners at home, we're trying something new. We're going to try to cover the same type of content, but we are shooting from the hip here on this Purdue recap. And Mike, a lot to cover on defense, a lot to cover about Chris Ash, but this offense was just too electric and too great to miss that. And so let's start positive. Let's go to the offense and the 56 points that Mike Denbrock put up with this unit. Who stood out to you the most? There's a lot of places this can go, but who stood out to you the most that we just got to cover?
I think you got to start with CJ Carr. I think he's exceeded my highest expectations so far. It's only 3 games, so still I don't want to anoint him the next great quarterback, but the signs are flashing for sure right now. So in terms of Pro Football Focus grade, he got a 93.4. That's not only is that an elite grade, that is a high elite grade. Pete Sampson tweeted that is the highest Pro Football Focus grade that a Notre Dame quarterback has gotten ever. Now, look, I got to qualify that. They've only been grading quarterbacks since 2014, but still, any single game going back to 2014, no one has graded out higher than CJ Carr did in this game. And you look at his stats. I mean, look, they're just eye-popping stats. It's not like he threw the ball 30 times, but 10 for 12, 223 yards. You round up to 19 yards, per attempt. Like these are just like eye-popping statistics. 2 touchdowns, and then even just the eye test. I feel like he was just making very impressive throws. You start with that first throw downfield to Malachi Fields, and just dropped it in a bucket, basically. Just absolute perfect deep ball. He continues to make these NFL type throws. Generally feels pressure pretty well. Obviously, there's that strip sack. But look, it looks like someone who the moment is never too big for him. Not that this was like a huge moment, but just we keep seeing that trend line. It feels like we might finally have that guy. And look, I think it's like that upside that Brett and I have talked about in the past, where Notre Dame finally needs that quarterback that has first round potential. Like he does look like that. It's very early, but if you told me 4 years from now, I'm watching Sunday Night Football, and you hear a couple, now here's a guy, and it's being referred to as CJ Carr, like, that wouldn't be that surprising to me. So I think CJ Carr, I think that's where you got to start. It's just exceeded expectations. We're seeing an explosive passing game. It's something that we've sorely lacked. And like, not only do you got to give credit to CJ Carr. I mean, you got to give credit to the receivers as well. Malachi Fields, I think both of us kind of had the stance of him being a very productive player, but in terms of him necessarily bringing that same level of productivity and potentially being a top level performer for us, it kind of remained to be seen a little bit. Like, we knew he would be at least solid. But he's quickly establishing himself, I think, as the bona fide number one. And granted, like I had the opinion at the beginning of the season that hopefully Jaden Greathouse would be that player. But right now it seems like it's certainly Malachi Fields. He had just some big time catches, 2 catches, 78 yards, touchdown. Jordan Faison, 105 yards. So we already have a receiver who's gotten 100 yards. We've already nabbed that.
Yeah, it took us till the playoff last year for Jane Greathouse to break that century mark. That was one of my, will it happen in the playoff predictions? And it was getting a 100-yard receiver, and Faison's already doing that. A couple other things on Carr. I didn't see, and again, I was watching this game from in the stadium, so certainly didn't have the best view that you'd maybe have on TV. I didn't see guys like wide open. Like Malachi Fields was obviously open on the deep ball, but this wasn't like he, had insane amounts of time to throw the ball and there was busted coverage. Like, these were layups. Like, these were lasers. he was 6 for 6 on balls over 10 yards downfield, 2 for 2 on balls over 20 yards downfield. Like that just has complete quarterback vibes to it. My only complaint, I know how well we were running the football, but throw the damn ball. I know everyone wants to say RTDB. The guy's only had 5 pass attempts in the first half, and he had over 120 yards. Like, throw the damn ball. Like, that's going to be my one thing for Denbrock. I get it. You don't have to bring it out in this game against Purdue. But I think in other situations, I just hope we are full. Training wheels are off. Handcuffs are off. Let CJ Carr run this offense. I think he's proven it. My last point in the passing game, where's Jaden Greathouse? This is now the second time in 3 games that Greathouse has been held without a catch. He's losing snaps to Will Pauling and Jordan Faison. Obviously, Faison playing a really, really big role, but Jaden Greathouse just kind of lost that bona fide number 1 wide receiver tag. And you are absolutely right. Fields and Faison are stepping in and for sure filling that void. But something I'm watching here going over the course of the season, maybe it's because he's the slot receiver, more balls in the middle, and rookie QB, you don't want taking risks over the middle. But at some point, I think this offense is going to need Jaden Greathouse to wake up.
Totally agree. I think that's the biggest area of development on our offense right now. Apart from we can nitpick a few areas in the pass protection, but hopefully as CJ Carr gets more comfortable, we'll be able to get that slot position more involved because I think there's a lot of upside there. Now, moving to the other aspect of the offense that also performed really well, that's the Notre Dame rushing attack, which is an attack that we expected to be highly effective this year, and they certainly showed it this game. It's interesting. This game is just like which running back is going to top the other? Is it going to be Love or Price? It's just both of these guys. They both averaged 8 yards a carry. Both had big time plays. Price had 3 touchdowns in the running game, and then he returned a kick for a touchdown. Which unfortunately there was that flag that I think Brett, you were in the stadium. It seemed like it kind of muted the celebration a little bit. When I saw the flag, I assumed it was probably going to be a hold. So I wasn't like celebrating the way I normally would have with the kickoff return.
Yeah, it did. We all kind of sat down and held our breath and were groaning and not able to, jump up and down and go nuts. And then they picked up the flag and we certainly did. It's interesting that Jadarian Price is playing better than Jeremiah Love. Like more yards per carry, a higher missed tackle rate, more yards after contact, like whatever speed Love has, I mean, Price is plowing through it with power. This is not to say that I don't think Jeremiah Love should be getting 20 touches a game, but I do think there should be a real conversation about going back to a more balanced Price and Love share because Jadarian Price, he is earning every single rep he's getting at, almost 7 yards a carry right now, leading the team in touchdowns, like just every metric right now, he's doing it on half as many touches. I'm curious to see how that plays out. I'm also really curious, especially with Eli Raridan really being the only tight end, not a lot of depth there. Do we start going to more 2 running back looks, no tight end, try to spread it out a little bit more, put Love and Price on the field at the same time, and just, I think it's going to cause more confusion for defenses. We'll see if that wrinkle comes in, but I think we got to figure out how to get both guys on the field.
Yeah, totally agree. I think there was, going into this season, there was debate about which running back group in the country is the best. And you'd hear Penn State mentioned, you'd hear Notre Dame mentioned. I think certainly Penn State has, look, they have a good argument, but I think based on what we've seen from this Notre Dame rushing attack already, I think it's really hard to argue against Notre Dame right now. Just having 2 guys like this, and a lot of that is Jadarian Price elevating game. It's not like Jeremiah Love is looking any different than what we expect. I mean, the guy, again, he averaged over 8 yards a carry, made a lot of these highlight reel type plays. It's just Jadarian Price. It's interesting. I thought like at the beginning of the season too, he looked like he had like added some muscle. I remember thinking like, his first kickoff, I was like, oh, man, this guy looks like.
Is that Audric Estime?
Yeah, exactly. I just looked bigger. And then like in that kickoff return, he basically just bounced off a guy and then took it to the house. So look, I think it's both these guys are challenging each other. They're elevating each other's games. It seems like if there's a healthy competition between the two where they're trying to challenge each other. And the beneficiary is the Notre Dame offense. Now, I think, Brett, the last area I want to touch on is the offensive line. Because coming out of the Miami game, this was for sure. This I would say this was as big of an area of concern as the defense, which is kind of I think now you say that and that's maybe sounds a little bit crazy, but I think when you think about it from that standpoint, it tells you that the offensive line has settled in a bit more and they're playing a lot better. Pass protection has certainly improved quite a bit. The one area that's been a little bit leaky, unfortunately, has been at left tackle, which is one of the most critical positions for pass protection. That has been Knapp. You've had the opinion in the past that maybe Knapp is a little out of position there. Maybe he'd be better suited for guard. I think we're seeing a bit of that. I mean, hopefully he improves, or we get Jagasaw back, and that allows us to kind of recalibrate some things along the line. Although I believe Jagasaw was slated to come in at guard, but maybe some of these issues kind of get you to rethink it. So that I would say that's the one area on the offensive line that's been a little leakier. The run blocking was much better. We were getting solid push. We graded out well in the run blocking game. So from my standpoint, the offensive line has been trending the right way, and I have confidence that by the end of the year, especially once we get Jagasaw back, that this should be an excellent unit. Curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I had a hard time assessing the offensive line in this game. I actually walked away maybe a little more muted. We gave up a 29% pressure rate until garbage time. So on CJ Carr's pass attempts, I don't love seeing 29% against Purdue. Like literally all 4 times they blitzed, the blitz got home. Don't love that. And then in the run game, absolutely right. The run game was fantastic. Whenever that occurs, you've got to give props to the offensive line. But it is worth saying that like Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love were just shredding tackles left and right on both the long touchdown run of 21 yards for Jadarian Price and the 46-yard touchdown for Jeremiah Love. Both those came after breaking tackles pretty much at or around the line of scrimmage and then busted them big. I will say, though, always credit receivers getting into the run game. Both of those long touchdown runs by Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love had huge blocks from Jaden Greathouse, had huge blocks from Jordan Faison, had huge blocks from Will Pauling. So I love that, especially for a guy like Jaden Greathouse. If the pass game's not going his way, he's not getting touches, he is still assignment correct, putting his body on the line in the run game. So overall, I was positive on the offensive line. I just didn't think it was as dominant by the O-line as much as it was our skill position players were just absolutely special in this game. I'll maybe round it out with just a couple other pretty crazy stats on offense. A 70% success rate in this game on expected passing down. So think long yardage situations. An 83% success rate. We had 8 plays, I think. I counted them up. I might have missed 1 or 2 because there's so many, but I think we had 8 plays go for 20 or more yards. So just an absolutely explosive machine in this game. Like one of the best offensive performances we've maybe seen other than playing Purdue last year. So again, Purdue's defense, not wanting to go up against Notre Dame after a loss in the near term for sure. And I feel pretty good looking at the schedule that Notre Dame doesn't have a juggernaut defense really rest of the way. Like maybe USC's defense is improved, maybe, but Arkansas has given up points. NC State's given up points. Boise State has been leaky. Like I'm feeling pretty good about what's ahead for Mike Denbrock. Mike, anything else you want to highlight here before we flip to the other side of the ball?
Yeah, I think I'll just call out that Purdue is not a great defense, but this is not the same Purdue team that we played last year. I think this is a much more competent Purdue team. We were talking about this before we even started recording. I think last year's Purdue team was it's so far at the bottom of the Power Four that it was essentially at like a kind of like a MAC level. This year, I think they're like a below average, like your standard below average Power Four team. That's kind of where they're shaking out. And we talked about this in our Purdue preview. The defense is the side of the ball that we think's a little bit better. So I think what we're dealing with here is a below average, not terrible defense. So you have to keep that in mind. But even accounting for all that, I think this was a stellar offensive performance. You mentioned the success rate, Brett. Our explosiveness was high. And then the havoc, we kept the havoc down very, very low. So pretty much any metric, any advanced metric that you want to judge the offense by, we excelled in. And it's also just great to see this being done by a dynamic quarterback and excellent running backs, plus an improving offensive line. So look, I think there's a reason we started with the offense, because it's more fun to kind of start on a positive note. So I think with that, Brett, maybe we shift to the other side of the ball where things are a little bit more up in the air. And maybe the topic that we start with here is just the kind of the general sentiment around the defensive as a whole. Like, the level of heat that Chris Ash is getting, Marcus Freeman's demeanor during the game and after the game. It just seems like there's a lot of frustration. At times, like Freeman even admitted that there's maybe a little bit of a sense of panic settling in at times. So curious to hear your take on all these rumblings around that side of the ball, and just the general feel for it right now.
Yeah, I don't know if I would use the word panic from Freeman, but I would certainly use the term frustrated. And to that end, this is a lot of things to the fan base is not necessarily what this is to Marcus Freeman. And I think that's right. And so what do I mean by that? Marcus Freeman was visibly frustrated in his interviews, was talking about play calling, was talking about execution by the players and technique. And then in the post-game press conference, Pete Sampson, the Athletic, called this out. If you go watch the video, he wasn't like Brian Kelly pounding the table, making water bottles fly. But like, he was consistently pounding the table like dozens and dozens of times. Like every other word out of his mouth was hitting the table as he said it. So a lot of frustration, a lot of energy that this clearly is not meeting Freeman's standard and expectations. But I continue to take a very different view that I don't think Chris Ash is on the hot seat. I don't think he's anywhere close to being on the hot seat. And unless if we go and lose, multiple games and Freeman just says, hey, let's do a tryout for Mike Mickens as interim defensive coordinator in November, I don't see Chris Ash going anywhere midseason while Notre Dame has any remotely, productive football left ahead of us. Not to mention coordinators have buyouts too. And so a direct quote from Freeman, just to put this in play. And then let's dive into the things that are working and are not working. But Freeman said during tough times, there's two options: fight or flight. And the guys that flight blame other people. It's their call. It's his fault. It's this coach's fault, or it's that player's fault. We gave up a big play. That corner should have covered him. That's the flight mode. You deflect and blame other people. But the fight mode is, gosh, call man again. Call man again. I promise you my man's not going to catch the ball. I'm going to play with the right technique, and I'm going to refuse to let my man catch the ball. Like, Freeman is clearly of the mindset, this is not one coach. This is not one player. This is right now some collective things breaking down, and it's just not to the standard we played at last year. But when I hear him break those things down, at first after the game and hearing what was going on at halftime, I was like, oh, wow, Freeman's like going after Chris Ash. I think he's made that very clear. No. Like, everyone else is reading between the lines. That's not what I said. And that is not what I meant. I am frustrated. We need to fix this. And it's not living up to Marcus Freeman's standard. And he's looking at Marcus Freeman when he says that. I think that's the right response.
Yeah, I agree with that, Brett. I think, and to be clear, when I was talking about panic, I meant more when Freeman was talking specifically about Purdue's drive at the end of the half. He was just
For
referring to
sure.
them just throwing a bunch of combinations. Like, there's almost a sense of panic. I'll distinguish that from like the general sentiment around the program, where I think you rightfully said that it's more frustration. So my opinion on Chris Ash, it's interesting. So I don't think he should be on the hot seat, but not yet. But I think this is where sometimes an overwhelming fan sentiment can kind of accelerate the timing of these things, right? So I think if there wasn't such a sense of kind of a sense of unity among the fan base that Ash is kind of the scapegoat on this, I think he'd probably have a little bit more leeway. But like, look, I think if we have a couple more duds on the defensive side of the ball, Freeman's like, it's possible that does kind of leak in, right? It's hard to totally ignore that. It's possible that some of that noise leaks in and, maybe would make him jump the gun a little sooner than he would otherwise. Obviously, everything I'm saying here is very premature, but as much as I would like to think that fan sentiment does not creep in, it does, especially when it's very heated like this. But this is, as you said, Brett, I think this is a holistic defense problem. It's like, if you're looking at someone to blame, it's not just one person. It's Freeman, it's Ash, it's Mickens, it's execution from the players, right? It's literally everybody right now. But the side of the ball, like the position group that we believe is the one that is at the crux of the issue, is the secondary, and that's been a theme for the last couple games. It's been explosive passing plays. There are aspects on the defense that are actually doing pretty well. We'll get into that more later. But when you have a defense at Notre Dame that gives up 30 points, that gets a lot of attention, because that's just something that we're not used to seeing, for a long time. It's just we've had consistently great defenses, and giving up 30 points, let alone to an offense like Purdue that we called out going into this game, one that we expected to be like one of the weaker offenses in the entire country. Look, I think there's no way that you can spin that as anything but a bad performance. Gave up 300 yards in the passing game, and as I mentioned, really what killed us were just these lapses in the passing game, these explosive passing plays. It continues to be a theme, and I think one qualification I have to make here is that Brett and I have talked about that defensive back room, and in our mind, there are three guys who are competent, if not good. You have Leonard Moore, who is elite. You have Adon Schuler, who consistently grades out as solid. People like to focus on that play against Miami, where where the Miami receiver, I forgot the receiver's name, but he made just like an absolute
Malachi Tony.
Tony made that circus catch, right? And like, we think that, like, okay, look, if it's Kyle Hamilton, maybe Kyle Hamilton does something there, but overall Schuler's been very solid in the secondary. And then I think also, like, just as critically as these other guys, Devontae Smith.
Correct that. CJ Daniels, Malachi Tony had their two other touchdowns. CJ Daniels was the one-handed catch.
Okay.
But anyways, I digress.
Yeah. No, good call out. And then Devontae Smith. I mean, that's the area that we have consistently gotten shredded, has been through speedy players in the slot. And Devontae Smith is, like, when he's played, he's shown himself to be a solid defender. So we've not had all three of these guys. I mean, we barely had them all together at any point this year. And in this last game, we were down Devontae Smith the entire game. We were down Leonard Moore, who is, like, shown himself. He's been playing like an All-American this year when he's been in. And then Adon Schuler, who's a captain, someone who's making sure people are lined up, and is a very good player for us. Like, he didn't play in the first half, so not surprising that we get shredded. But I mean, I don't want to say not surprising we get shredded, but I think it's like, when you put that into context, it makes it a little bit harder to judge the secondary. I think even when you consider, though, that we have a lot of true freshmen in there, it's still a very poor performance. I mean, there are many things you could do. You'd like to think that these guys would be a little bit better prepared. You'd like to think that there's more that the coaching staff could do to kind of not put them in a situation where they're going to get exposed. So it's, even when, like I said, even when you consider that we were down our three best guys in the secondary, look, it's still a bad performance. And there's still, when we get these guys back, I hope we see a lot of improvement, but very, very much an unknown at this point.
Yeah. Here's the glass half full. It's all of the context you just said. Because it's not only Devontae Smith and Leonard Moore didn't play today, and Adon Schuler was out in the first half. That meant we had a first-time starter in Tay Johnson and two true freshmen coming in to start at cornerback. Now, so that's the glass half full. And that showed up on the field. When Adon Schuler played in this game in the second half, Purdue's drives were punt, 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 interception, garbage time touchdown when we pulled our starters and we're up 56-23. Okay, I'll look past that one. Like, when we just had one of those guys back, we completely shut down Purdue in the second half. But We gave up 7 passes over 19 yards in this game. We are now third in the country in most passes allowed of 20 yards or more. We all knew Leonard Moore wasn't playing in this game. We all knew Adon Schuler wasn't playing in this game. We all knew Devontae Smith wasn't playing in this game. We all knew Purdue's entire offense is built around trying to get explosive passing. That's what they've done all year in their first 3 games. At some point, there's got to be an adjustment that works. And when there's not, you got to look to the coaching staff. Freeman said in this game, which this quote makes me a little nervous. He said that last drive, I don't think there was anything we could do. We tried cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4. What happens is you start to panic, to use your panic word. Okay, this coverage isn't working. Let's try this. This isn't working. Let's try this. I don't love hearing that's what's going on in the headsets and just not finding anything working and grasping for straws. But I keep thinking, could you imagine like Steve Sarkisian or Chip Kelly or pick your offensive-minded coach saying, gosh, my offensive coordinator is the problem? No. Could you imagine Kirby Smart or Nick Saban say, gosh, I just don't have the right defensive coordinator? No. I don't view this as a Chris Ash problem. Everyone wants to fire Chris Ash and promote Mike Mickens. Aren't we talking about the fact that Mike Mickens' unit doesn't have enough depth right now and they're getting burned in explosive pass plays? I don't think this is a Chris Ash problem. I think this is a Mike Mickens, Marcus Freeman, and Chris Ash problem. And right now, there's a lot of good going on. I do want to talk about the good on the defense because there's a lot there. I think there's so many ways to overreact to this. It is one thing. It is explosive pass plays. And we see it time and time again. When we get burnt, there is not safety help. Like we are going single high safety, which means that safety is either committing to the right side or left side of the field. And the other side is one-on-one with no help. Like at some point, can we just say, hey, we have a true freshman corner over there. We will not let him be exposed with no safety help. Like, can we just say, nope, that's the one thing we will not give up is our true freshman corner being beat without safety help. If the safety and the true freshman corner gets beat, fine, but we will refuse to let that happen. Like, what are we doing? At some point, there's got to be an adjustment.
Yeah, Brett. So look, I think those are all really good points. I think for me, the takeaway is that it's like we should have such a talent mismatch over Purdue that even if you have these true freshmen in the secondary, we should have enough to where you can adjust to compensate for that. And against an offense that is one of the worst in the Power Four, like you should find a way to not give up 30 points. Basically, that's kind of my takeaway. Again, not surprising that some true freshmen struggle, but yeah, it's I don't know. It's been very frustrating, and you can like again we circling back to a theme that we talked about at the beginning. I mean, you can visibly see the frustration on Marcus Freeman's face. You can see it on Chris Ash's face. You can see it on the players' face. Like they're putting their hands up at times. They're kind of like arguing with each other. So not what you want to see from a functional offense. Now that we've I think talked about the big. I mean, I'm not even going to call it an elephant in the room. I mean, this is just like what everybody's talking about. Now that we've talked about that, I mean, look, I think there are areas where the defense is doing well. And I think it's important that we call that out because if you see a turnaround on this defense, I think these areas are the groups that provide the stability from which us to build. And I think the run defense is the one that you got to start with. And Brett, you pointed out a really interesting stat to me before we started recording, so I'm going to kick it back over to you. But yeah, that's a group that consistently has been playing well this year.
Yeah, they rushed for 0.1 yards before contact per attempt. So overall, they rushed for 3.4 yards per attempt. Not great. 3.3 of that came from their running backs after contact. Their starting running back, Devin McAbee, rushed for negative yards before contact. That means more often than not, he was hit by a Notre Dame defender behind the line of scrimmage. We've never seen that. In the 5 years we've been doing this show, we have never seen a negative yardage before contact for a starting running back. So a ton to hang our hat on in the run game. they committed to the run. They got 84 yards rushing because they ran it 25 times. Like they committed to running the ball. There was nothing there. The other stat, this is one where I'm going to disagree with Freeman a little bit. Freeman once again said this isn't just the secondary. We need to be better matched up between coverage and pass rush. Like when we're in a play call that is calling for pass rush, we need to get home. I think he's trying to say this to take the heat off the secondary or to say it's the entire defense, not just the back four, and kind of not single anyone out. But we only blitzed 15% of the time in this game and got pressure 32% of the time. That's getting a ton of pressure with very little blitzing. And when we got pressure, they beat us on three deep completions, but like pretty ineffective on 3 completions on 13 pressures. Like those 3, again, went for pretty big chunk yards, but not that effective when they were under pressure. And so to me, I think it's easy to say, there's so much wrong on the front 7. I just think this is a coverage issue, and we haven't found the adjustment to protect our weak links.
Totally agree. I think the pressure point is a big one because that's a point that I keep seeing people make, is that our pass rush is abysmal, and I just don't think that's true.
No.
Is this Texas A&M's defensive line from last year? No, it's not. But as you mentioned, you have a 15% blitz rate, and you're getting almost 32% pressure. Look, they're doing a pretty good job, and that's real pressure. If you look at the stats for their opposing quarterback, clean under pressure, pretty dramatic drop off when he's under pressure. So clearly, this is the nature of this pass rush pressure that we're getting is impactful. Now, where it's maybe not showing up as much as people would like, and this is a theme continuing from from last week, is that we're not getting like as many of those headline havoc stats on the defensive line. We're getting more tackles for losses, but in the passing game, I think only 2 sacks. So it's not getting home as much, but it's improving. Granted, you have to account for the fact that this is Purdue's offense. So again, it's not the Miami offensive line. It's not the Texas A&M offensive line. But if you want to see signs for an improving defensive line, this is what you want to see. And look, we did see it. And I think it's like the first step towards generating these big time havoc plays is you got to get the pressure. And the pressure's getting there. And we're starting to see some improvement in these sacks and these other stats.
And by the way, the pressure got there against Texas A&M. I think that's easy to look past. We didn't get home a lot because Marcel Reed is evasive and gets out of the pocket and throws the ball away. But we generated 43% pressure against Texas A&M and blitzed a lot more. We were blitzing over 30% of the time in that game plan. Chose not to blitz as much in this game plan and still generated a ton of pressure relative to the blitz rate.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I think because their Purdue's quarterback is maybe not quite as mobile as Reed, it looked, just from an eye test, the pressure did look more impactful than it did in the Texas A&M game. I think one other call I want to make here is that it got better as the game went on too. In the first half, it felt like we were maybe struggling a little bit to get effective pressure, but in the second half, it improved a lot. Look, part of that might be that we had Schuler back in the secondary, and that kind of allows you to kind of be a bit more aggressive, right? I don't want to totally discount that. So defensive line, I think they're trending the right way. I'm not going to say they've arrived, but if I'm looking at what the problem is on defense, for me, it's not the front 7. And then, adjacent to this is tackling. That was, I would say, out of the Miami game, people were really critical of tackling. When we looked into the stats, it wasn't a great performance, but it certainly wasn't anything where I was necessarily like raising alarm bells. In this game, we only had 2 missed tackles. That's exceptional. So any tackling issues that there was maybe a perception of us having, I think we put that to bed in this game. So defensive line, I think overall strong performance, particularly in the second half. Look, again, they're just showing signs that we want to see that they might be improving. And like I mentioned, the other issue, tackling, that's another thing that I feel like we can put to bed. So it's really what this is all doing is it's just kind of like focusing my vision in on the secondary as the Achilles heel, so to speak, for the defense right now.
Yeah, and then just to close it out, only other thing I really had to cover on the game as a whole, mixed bag in special teams. The big kickoff return touchdown for Jadarian Price, you mentioned at the top of the show. missed a short field goal for Eric Schmidt. We should note he's, I believe, a true freshman. And our starter, Noah Burnett, is out with a hip injury. It doesn't sound serious, but we heard that about Mitch Jeter last year and saw that really impact him for a lot of the season. So, a shaky kick unit here again, a second week in a row after the botched extra point in the A&M game. Nervous in a close game. Are we going for it on more fourth downs? Are we going for two, et cetera? Might be a little bit shaky in that unit. What else, Mike, should we be covering? What other advanced metric didn't we talk about?
Just to round it out with some advanced stats, like they had an okay. I mean, it's not even okay. Their success rate was 43%. I think ideally we'd like that to be a little bit lower, but that's certainly not bad from our standpoint. I don't think you're ever upset about someone getting a 43% success rate. But for Purdue, I'd like it to be a little bit lower. But consistent with what we're saying in terms of like the deficiencies of our defense. Purdue's explosiveness was high. So that's really where they got us. So it's just, even when you dive into these advanced stats, they paint the same picture that we were saying as we go into all these other different metrics that we're referencing too. And then I guess the other advanced metric I'll mention that's just consistent with what we were talking about in terms of more pressure, more havoc. Our havoc rate was really high, 27.5%. That's an excellent number. Granted, USC had and I'm not going to say that, I don't think USC has one of the best defenses in the country. USC generated a lot of havoc against Purdue recently as well. But look, anytime you get a 27.5% havoc rate, that's really good. A lot of that was from the secondary, but I think you also have to give credit to the defensive line here, because when they generated pressure, it led to the quarterback rushing some throws. So, and that is one area where the defensive backs, did a little better with, was pass deflections and interceptions. But I don't think that totally makes up for. That definitely does not make up for obviously the big explosive plays they were going.
Yeah, it is easy to sit and say, well, the true freshman Dallas Golden, got beat a couple times, had a big interception and a pass deflection in this game too. So I think the havoc is a good call out. It feels a little boomer busted in that pass game. Yeah. And it's definitely got to get shored up. So Notre Dame gets a W. We're on the board, takes care of business, and looking forward to what could be a shootout next week in Arkansas against the Razorbacks. Until we're here to preview that show, go Irish, beat Razorbacks.